Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Sell by Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Alex Smith, and this is the podcast where we learn from people in all walks of life that sell things through the lens of human connection. I think we can learn from human skills from people all around us. This is the place where I'll bring the very best of those people together. And today we just have someone who I've known for years, and if I think if there was a gold medal for super connecting, this person would be the Michael Phelps of the award. This is a founder, CEO of an awesome search firm and placement firm called SomethingNew. He's also a founder of a community that I'm a part of many communities, but only a few that I'm super active in, and this is one of them. It's called the Outlier Project, and the people you're going to find out, the people that he brings together on monthly calls, even weekly calls, are some of the most accomplished people in the business world and sports world and music world. Just amazing people that he knows. This is somebody who has had a lot of adversity in his life and has done some amazing things. And I can't wait for him to teach us all about how he's gotten to where he's gotten and how he's helped just create the relationships that he has in his life. Please welcome none other than Scott MacGregor to the podcast. Welcome, Scott.
I love the enthusiasm, Alex. Thank you, my friend. It is an honor to be here. So thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Scott, I was always like looking at you and thinking like the title of this podcast just really represents a lot of what you do and your business, the community, and everything. So I think I'm just really excited about this. So thank you for making this happen today. I was thinking a little bit about like just kind of opening up with you about where to go, and I always like to ask people at the beginning because I think like you really define kind of what this podcast is all about. Mm-hmm. So I ask people, everyone, a signature question, and it's about kind of what you really, how you really show up and what you really think about. So when I say the term to you, Scott, when I say the term sell something and sell it by being human, what is the first thing that comes to mind to you, and how would you define that for yourself and what you do today?
Yeah, I've always thought of sales in very simplistic terms, and I've been in sales my entire career. Started as an individual contributor and then very quickly went into a leadership role, which turned into chief revenue officer. So I've been selling for a long time, but I've always seen it as very simplistic. Sales is just about alignment. It's around figuring out whether your solution fits the problem that somebody has. If it does, you probably have a sale. And if it doesn't, then you shouldn't try to, put that square peg in a round hole. So I see it very simplistically. It's never been like a dirty word to me, which I think it is for a lot of people. It's just about two human beings having an honest conversation and trying to figure out, can my solution solve your problem? If it can, that's great. And if it can't, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. I like that term. And you put it into, really simple terms. A lot of people think, okay, what do I need to say? How do I overcome objections? What is the step-by-step process? What is the exact thing at the right moment? But when you think of it just in those terms, like people are only buying to solve a problem, get better, accomplish a goal, and how do you align yourself, that like walking alongside.
You're frozen on my end.
Okay. I'll pause. Let me see. How about now? Can you see me?
Yeah, but the picture is kind of grainy, so it keeps coming back in and out, and you keep freezing. Am I freezing on my end?
A little bit, but it's like it's weird. Like the actual recording
right now,
is
you're
different.
frozen.
Okay. Hold on one second. Let's try this.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
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 Riverside.
video quality on your side looks very like shaky and grainy, but
Okay.
I mean now it's better. But
It could be like a Windows thing. Let me see.
okay.
No. Give me a second. Sometimes it is really like one of those things where you can't have anything going in the background, I find.
Oh, gotcha.
So let me see. All right, let's try this. How do I look? Is it a little grainy, but you can still see me? Am I totally
Yeah, it's
frozen?
very fuzzy. But
Okay. Let's see.
when you look at yourself, is it clear? So now it's
Yeah.
clear. Now it's
Yeah.
clear.
Okay. Okay. I think what I find is like the recording itself like will come through. The video might be
Yeah.
like on your side. Like that's just how I don't know. Riverside's weird this way. Like I'll
Yeah.
message
I don't
them,
know.
but I'll pick it up and it just says like actual recording is higher quality.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
fine with me. I'm good.
Okay. All right. So so Scott, let me ask you a little bit about alignment. So kind of thinking back into your career before you like just when you first started getting into to selling anything, can you just talk to me about like how you know what were some of your first sales jobs maybe even you know even as far back to being a kid, like what are some you know your first memories of asking someone for something and needing to create maybe a change on the other side of the person that
Yeah.
you're asking for.
So I grew up pretty poor, and I grew up pretty poor in an affluent town, which was a weird way to grow up. So I was always motivated, and I remember every year I'd have the opportunity to sell wrapping paper, and there was all these prizes that you could win, and one was a tent, and I remember I was hell bent on achieving the goal to get the tent. So I would go door to door selling wrapping paper, Christmas wrapping paper, and that was I don't know. I was young, 8, 9 years old, something like that. And so yeah, I've been selling probably since an early age, and as a professional. Started selling copiers, which is a, super
That's a
tough
tough
industry
sale.
right out of college.
Oh my
But
gosh.
it was a great, great proving ground, and I learned a ton.
Yeah. What do you like remember most about it? Like what was like the hardest part about it?
In terms of early on or right out of college?
Yeah, like yeah, just right out of the college, like so the copier job. Like what was like the
It
hardest
was. It
part about
wasn't.
it?
It
Yeah.
wasn't hard because what I realized is that if you worked hard, you would be successful. And I always say if it's on the back of your baseball card, it's not bragging. Um, I won sales rep of the month, like probably almost every single month I worked there, right off the bat. And I was just a kid. But I worked so hard. I worked so much harder than everybody else. And I think because I was genuine, I was good at building relationships, I was tenacious, I just did the work. So I had a good work ethic, I was dedicated, I was diligent, I was disciplined, and I was very resilient. So the rejection part didn't really bother me. Um, and I was like, man, this is actually kind of easy. And I saw it was funny when I started. I'll never forget this. I started work on a Monday, right after I graduated from college. And on Friday, everybody in my office uh, like huddled together, all the salespeople, and they were like, they were gonna go to a bar, and I'm like, what? Like, don't. And they told me, yeah, we don't work on Fridays. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't work on Fridays? Yeah, we go and do something. And I'm like, yeah, I got to make money. Um, it was just such a foreign concept to me. So I realized right away that half the battle is just showing up. It's just putting in the work. And if you do, and you're honest and you're trustworthy and people like you, uh, it really wasn't that hard.
Yeah, good things will happen. Yeah, it was funny. Well, you know what? Like, can you think of people? Because I look at you, Scott, like, and we'll talk about, the Outlier Project and the amazing people you've connected to in your life. And I just feel like your network is, like I said, when I'm not exaggerating people when I say Scott is like the gold medalist for super connecting. I mean, the people that we see month in and week in and week out are some of, they're gold medalists. They are CEOs. They're people that you're just like, how did Scott? I feel like people are always like, how does Scott know these people? Is the feeling, and how is this, not. How aren't there not hundreds of people? And who knows? Maybe it gets to that point. But I'm excited to be one of the early people kind of that involved in this. But tell me, like, are there mentors? Are there people you can point to throughout your life that wow, they showed me something about showing up differently? I feel like you said something on a podcast. It was on Amber Lee's podcast, and it was about showing up differently. And it's like doing, like, just to that story, doing the different things that are different, right? It's like, that the experience you create is different. I think it was something about like, it's, people think that showing up differently isn't scalable, but it's the unscalable things, I think you said, that, truly make us extraordinary. And so tell me, are there people through your life that you can point to that, weren't ordinary, that you took something from or that you learned from? Who comes to mind when you think of those extraordinary people growing up?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're necessarily sales related, but I had an uncle. My uncle Ray was probably my hero, and to this day, I would say if you ask me who my hero is, it's my uncle Ray. He was an incredibly humble guy, unbelievably trustworthy. Really, really smart, and I just loved how he walked through life with a servant's mentality, completely humble. He owned a newspaper, which most people didn't even know he was the owner because he decided that he didn't really want to make that public, and he continued to kind of do his job doing typesetting and stuff like that, even though he was one of the owners of the newspaper. And so I think he just taught me a lot about how to carry yourself. I had a mentor who was my good friend's father, who really kind of showed me what it meant to be a professional sales leader. His name is Ken Green, and I learned a lot from him about the profession of sales, because growing up I didn't even really know, oh, that's a job that you could do, and what it was all about. And I think his honesty and his integrity is really what stood out, because you kind of maybe at that age have a preconceived notion that sales is more kind of that stereotypical used car salesman, and he elevated that profession in my mind and made me start to think, maybe that's something that I'd want to do in the future. And then there's been many people, that I've learned from throughout the years that show up differently. Jesse Itzler is probably, the best example of somebody who just shows up differently. But long before I met people like Jesse. I think I started experimenting with different things really in that first job out of college that I didn't see anybody else doing, but I'm like, I don't know, this seems like something that could work. And I wasn't afraid to try stuff. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but I was pretty creative.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear some ideas or examples of things you've done, but I just what I took away from what you said was it's the accumulation of showing up differently. I think
Yeah.
showing up differently is a skill, and it's not something you just do once and oh that was cool and that was a gimmick or that was just let me try that and oh it didn't work so like let me just move on. It's like you're saying I'm not afraid to try new things. I'm not afraid to show up differently to people, and that accumulates over time. Like as a kid you were doing that, you were as
Yep.
your next role as a copier salesperson you were showing up differently, just like that example you used, the newspaper owner. I mean what's more different than an owner of anything just doing the frontline work,
Yeah.
like no one expects to look over and they just expect to see the person at their same level, but that person knows that they want to carve and define their own path, right? So that is what that accumulation of showing up differently I felt like is a skill that people don't maybe at least get intentional about honing, or they are they're unsure about
Yeah.
how to do it.
I mean, I've got a good example that kind of made a big impact on me early on in my sales career. So, I was selling copiers. Like you can't get much lower on the rung than selling copiers. And so there was a local bank, Brantford Savings Bank, that was going out of business. So they were having an auction, and it listed everything that they were auctioning off. And they were auctioning off like 3 or 4 copiers. So I thought to myself, okay, 3 or 4 people are going to walk away with those copiers, but there's going to be people that are bidding on the copiers that aren't going to get them. Those are all
Ah,
people that need a copier. So I made all of these flyers, hundreds of flyers, with my business card attached to it. And I I stuck them under every single windshield that was in the parking lot of the auction. So probably 150 or so. So in the middle of the auctioneer stops the auction and he says, "Is Scott MacGregor here?" And I could tell by the tone of his voice he wasn't going to congratulate me. This wasn't a good thing. So I'm like,
oh no.
I was standing next to actually a friend of mine, his father, a buddy of mine that I played high school football with, Rob Spignesi. I was standing next to Rob's dad. And so when the auctioneer said, "Is Scott MacGregor here?" he kind of tapped me, and I looked at him, and I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. So anyway, this auctioneer freaks out. He says, "Listen, hand billing," which I didn't even know what hand billing means. I guess hand billing is what I did, putting stuff under people's windshields. He's like, I don't know if he said it was illegal, but anyway, what I was doing was wrong. And he freaked out. So I slink out of there, and lo and behold, there's a voicemail from the president of my company. I work for a company called MBS Business Systems, which later became Icon. And it was the president, Harry Moore. And it's a voicemail. And he says to me in a very short voicemail, "Call me." And I'm like, oh boy.
Had you ever met him before? This is the president of the
I had
company?
met,
Or?
yes, I had
Okay.
met him.
Okay.
So I call him, and he said, "Scott, I heard what happened today." And anyway, so he said, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting fired. And he said, "Scott, I just wanted to say congratulations." And he said, you know, you're not afraid to do things that other people are probably not going to do, and that's going to take you a long way. And that encouragement that I got from Harry Moore, whatever that was, 30 years ago, it stuck with me, and it poured probably gas on the fire, and I
Wow.
continued to try to do different things. I remember going back to the office one night, and one of our reps, his name is Mike Sagar, he was all bent out of shape because the guy at Remington Razors, I don't know if you remember that company,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he's like, this purchasing guy is giving me such a hard time. This account is like, forget it. I don't even want to work on it anymore. And I said, you don't want it? I'll take it. And I said, why don't you call Victor Kayem? So Victor Kayem at the time owned the New England Patriots. And he bought Remington Razors, and he was very famous at the time because he made commercials that said, I love the company so much, I bought it. And so he was the owner of the Patriots. He was on TV all the time. And I said, why don't you call Victor Kayem? He's like, call Victor Kayem about copiers? What are you, crazy? And I said, well, can I have the account? And he goes, yeah, sure. So we made a bet in the office that I said I could get Victor Kayem on the phone, and I did. I got him on the phone, and he's like, who is this maniac who's calling me? Because I called way after hours, and he happened to pick up his own phone because I think his
Oh my
administrator had
God.
already
It's
left.
gone for the day. Yeah.
Long story short, I didn't get the deal, but he put me in the right direction, and I wound up getting a meeting with their purchasing people. They didn't buy from me, but I think it just proved to me that all the things that people think are impossible, or maybe not the way you're traditionally supposed to do it, like you're not supposed to call the CEO of the company, especially when he's somebody famous who owns the Patriots. But I was like, why not? That seems like the best avenue to get success. And just all those things, they just made me understand that showing up differently was the path to success.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you have so many of those, and I love hearing. Thank you for telling the story. And the people you attract, I feel like, have all these stories because I know, like, so for all of you, so, Scott, yeah, while he has a career in sales, he then, founded a company which, who, they're placing people in sales roles. They're placing people in all sorts of roles throughout the workplace. But then on the side has this amazing community that just to talk about one of the many hundreds. Scott gave you one. I'll give you one about Scott. But how I first even knew about Scott and the name, I get a letter from someone that Scott employed, Tabitha Kavanaugh, who was the first guest on this podcast. We just got to know each other over LinkedIn, and I get a letter from her out of the blue it's actually an envelope package. I'm like, my wife's like, who the hell is Tabitha Kavanaugh? Like, are you like cheating on me or something? Like, I open this up, and she sends me Scott's book. So Scott's an author as well, 4-time author of life lessons. Scott's book of Standing O with like a handwritten note, and I think like some people over everything stickers, and just saying like, I forget the note, something about like, here's to someone who, like, I think, exemplifies people over everything, just really rooting for you, knew I was looking for work. And, same sort of thing. Didn't place me. She was she placed people, but we've had an amazing relationship. I've given stuff to her. She's given to me. We have a lifelong relationship, and the same thing with you, Scott, I believe. So it's just those things that are different. It's not transactional. It's memorable, and yeah, I love that he lit that fire under you to kind of show up, to be extraordinary, really, with whatever you do, is what I got from that story. Well, talk to me if we pivot a little bit, Scott, to this community. So the theme, just kind of the mantra of the community is, I love it. It's, anybody can be ordinary. We all can be ordinary, right? But, we all have the power to choose to be extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
And you always say, like, you don't have to go to Harvard or be an NBA player in the NFL or be gifted with athletic skills. Like, that's great. Yes, people are born, with some talents, but we can be extraordinary people without those things. So tell me, like, what really, helped you define that for this community, and why did you start this community? Let's go there. Like, what was it that you felt like this is something that's necessary and that I need to get out in the world? Because starting a community is not easy. Like, managing it, scheduling calls, the logistics behind it's a business all in itself. Why did you start it, and why that mantra for this community?
I started because, at the end of the day, I really feel like I want to make an impact on the world, and I'm not going to live forever. And when all is said and done, that dash between the dates, it has to be meaningful. I am paranoid that I could potentially sleepwalk through life, because I've seen a lot of people sleepwalk through life, and I absolutely refuse to do that. And the feeling that I can impact people really drives me. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to care about the books that I've written, the companies I've started, the house I live in, the car I drive. They're going to care about the impact I make. And while I think I make a big impact by running my company, Something New, that I started 9 years ago, I knew that's not an overly scalable business, but a community I knew was incredibly scalable. I also knew that a community was a great platform to give people access to the friends that I've made over the years, because I've always thought, it seems selfish that if I'm having a personal or professional problem, I can pick up the phone and I can call Dick Vermeil, or I can call Jesse Itzler, or I can call Brandy Chastain, or I can call all these unbelievable people that I've forged really great friendships with throughout my life. And I'm like, I want to give people access to these folks as well. And, that's what we do through the Outlier Project. I think one of the ways that everybody can live an extraordinary life is to surround themselves with people that are unique and different and creative and doing extraordinary things. So I've always tried to surround myself with people that were 10 steps ahead of me. And that's really kind of how the Outlier Project became what it is. And it's been nothing but fun. It definitely does not feel like a job. It doesn't feel like business. It just feels like fun. Helping people to live their version of an extraordinary life is an incredible privilege, and it's a blessing, and that's how I view it every single day.
Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, I'm blessed to be a part of it as well. And it's nothing short of amazing to me how you've carried yourself in a way that lends like that people feel and like they want to kind of reciprocate or want to give you time back, right? Like, these are important people. Time's their greatest asset, right? Like, it's not nothing for someone to give an hour. And it's my understanding that a lot of these people are doing it because they want to give back to you. It's maybe not like these people get paid tens of thousands of dollars to get on stages sometimes to give presentations for an hour, and I don't believe they're giving you tens of thousands of dollars to, or you're not paying. Yeah, you're not giving
them a dollar.
You're not giving them a dollar. That's amazing to me. So tell me a little bit about, I mean, people must look at like, how do I, even get close to what Scott's doing. So, but I feel like it's things that we can all learn from. So there was a time, Scott, where I know like your network didn't just come with hundreds of people. You came from a relatively modest family in a affluent, community.
Yeah.
So talk to me about like how you kind of started building this network of build big people, and maybe the core philosophy or fundamentals of how you show up when you meet someone that has like a huge audience that is hard to get access to. How do you show up? Because I'm sure you meet people just in very quick encounters that are very important, very sought after people. But then we all do. We all do that. We all meet people sometimes, maybe for a book signing or off of a stage, few minutes, but then that's it. And the relationship dies. How do you show up in a way that you get people to give you their time so willingly like they have?
So I've always been super curious. I love to learn about people. I think people sense right away. I'm not looking for anything, nothing. I'm not even looking for their time necessarily to do something for my business or for the Outlier project. I'm just legitimately curious. So almost all of these relationships predate the Outlier project. And I think when you show up genuinely and you don't view things, a lot of people just view things as very transactional. You'll meet somebody at a book signing, but then there's no follow-up and there's no support. Or people feel like, what can I possibly do for this New York Times best-selling author, or this Olympic gold medalist, or this pro athlete, or this CEO, or this billionaire? There's always things you can do. So I think the reason why people are very gracious and generous with their time is that I have poured into them. And if you looked at the scales, I've given them way, way more than what they're giving me back. As much as I appreciate what they do in terms of giving back to me and pouring into our community, they're happy to do it because I've probably done quite a bit for them. And that can be strategic introductions. That can just be supporting any of their initiatives. But it's also understanding. I think I understood very early on that access is available, and access to people that have influence is really important, because the more access you have to people that are important and have influence, it just allows you to amplify what you want to do. And I want to do good things in the world. I want to give back, and my ability to do that is directly proportional to the relationships that I have. And I think, so early friendships with people like Tiki Barber, who, is an all-time great running back for the New York Giants, that spawned many, many other relationships. And then it's just like a snowball going downhill, because those people introduce you to other people because they're used to people taking advantage of them. They're used to people having an ulterior motive. And I think, to use Tiki as an example, I think when he realized I had no ulterior motive, I thought he was an incredibly smart guy. I thought he was an unbelievable businessman. I obviously, was in awe of what he accomplished on the field as a football player. But that friendship really spawned a lot of other friendships that kind of led me to develop more and more and more. And I have a strategy of how to do that. I call it Who's Your Oprah. That's probably a whole nother podcast. But if you don't have a strategy to develop high impact relationships, it's very hard to do it.
Yeah. If you could, and I think this is a little bit about, what people like kind of miss, because like you said, like, building a network is selling in the fact that you don't have a product you're pushing, or maybe even, value that there's no money being sometimes exchanged hands for a certain thing. Maybe there's money you're paying to get access to certain things, but I feel like, you're like that strategy of doing it in a way where there is no, there is no motive. There is no like, I'm trying to get this person to be on a podcast or to join the Outlier project or to lead. Like, you're really just, like you said, pouring into them, supporting them, doing certain things. So maybe help people understand, like maybe someone like Jesse, like, how do you start from like nothing to, like following up, giving feedback, doing things in a way where that person starts to take notice that, oh wow, this Scott guy is continuously showing up. He's continuously adding value. Like, what are examples or things that you do to, like, maybe they're little things you do to like signify to someone, oh wow, they're not trying to take advantage of me or asking for anything. That's what is so amazing to me. I think you once told me, you're not flat out asking people to join or to be on an Outlier project call. You rarely ever kind of say those words to people. You may tell them about what you're doing, and then they go, oh, can I be involved? They ask you if they can be involved. Yep. Is what I understand most of what happens. So how, help people understand maybe what you're doing. What are some things you're doing you think that kind of signify to people that you truly are? I
do the work first, which is I do the research. I know everything about them, everything I could possibly imagine. I know their birthday. I know their pets' names. I know their kids' names. I know their spouse. I know all of that stuff. And I'm not doing it to be manipulative. I'm doing it because I think they're a really interesting person that I'd love to forge a friendship with. And so, if it's your birthday, you're going to get a video message from me. You're not going to get a text. You're not going to get an email. You're not going to get, you're going to get a video message from me. If you have a book, I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to write a review on Amazon. I'm going to support you on your social media. I'm going to try to figure out, what your goals are and who would be a good strategic introduction. Jesse is a big speaker, and I got him on a stage at Hypergrowth, and he was the headliner. That was helping two friends out. So David Cancel is the, CEO and founder of Drift, which put on Hypergrowth. And I thought I loved David, call him DC. And I'm like, I know this conference is super important to him. And what could I do that would benefit him? And I thought, boy, getting Jesse Itzler to headline Hypergrowth would be pretty cool. And I thought Jesse would probably like to do it as well. So, I reached out to DC and I said, do you want me to try to get Jesse? He was like, oh my God, if you could get Jesse, that'd be unbelievable. We wound up getting Jesse, his wife, Sarah Blakely, and I got Heather Monahan, who wound up interviewing both of them on stage, and I also got him a Navy SEAL, Todd Seneff, to speak at Hypergrowth. So, it's just appeasing all those different people. So Heather was happy, Sarah was happy, Jesse was happy, DC was happy, Todd Seneff was happy. It's just trying to help people accomplish their goals, and if I can do that through the relationships that I have, that's what I want to do.
It's awesome. I feel like it's a long game that people aren't really willing to play. And, like you don't meet someone saying, oh, like, I know maybe like this opportunity or this thing that will lead to another thing that will lead to another thing. Like you can't predict that opportunity will come, but it's like you put yourself in the right position so that, you know, when opportunities present themselves, like you can take an advantage of it.
It's
and I think,
Alex,
you
just hit it on the head. It's the biggest mistake that people make with relationships. What they do is they say, how am I going to monetize this relationship with Alex Smith? And if they can't figure out how they're going to monetize that relationship in the next 30, 60, or 90 days, they're probably not going to do a lot of investment to get to know Alex Smith. The way I look at it is Alex is a really interesting guy. I love your story. I love your podcast. I love everything about you. So why wouldn't I try to get to know you and develop a friendship with you? I never try to figure out, is there a monetary component to it? Because what I've realized my entire life is, again, I'm a kid who grew up very poor, but I've always wound up in these great spots. And when I wind up in these great spots, I say, how the hell did I get here? How am I in this room or doing this or accomplishing that? And I kind of reverse engineer it. And what I find is that it's not a straight line. It's a crazy circuitous path that took me to that moment. But had I said at that time, you know, how am I going to monetize this relationship? I have no idea. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I just like to hang out with really cool, interesting people and build friendships. Like, to me, that's fun. And variety's the spice of life, so I like it to be very eclectic. Like, I'm not looking to have friendships with all chief financial officers. To me, that would be pretty boring, and nothing against chief financial officers, but I would say, like, I don't want friendships with all doctors or all lawyers. I like to have friendships with all kinds of people. And that to me is interesting, and I think that's afforded me the opportunity to make really good strategic introductions to tons of people. It doesn't matter kind of what they're interested in.
Yeah. I mean, it's so I can feel it too when when you have conversations with me or even in a group setting. Like, you're running a community, there's 30 or 40 people on a call, and there's hundreds of people in the community. But I feel like everybody in the community feels like they know you personally. Like, you're shouting people out on LinkedIn. Every new person that joins, you're talking about them and posting about them on LinkedIn, and so people feel close to you. And yeah, like, it could be, I'm sure some people you're closer to than others, but everybody probably feels like I could go to Scott. Scott's approachable. I could, even though he's he has his own company. He's a busy guy. I'm sure, people feel like, they can reach out to you, right? And if they did have something they needed, you could ask, they could reach out to you. But, it's just really interesting to me that you don't have to necessarily ask for things. It's beyond that transactional thing. It's just you, like you said, the relationships predate the outlier project. So when we see someone come on, a lot of times it's because of someone you've known for years that maybe
Sure.
made a strategic introduction, or literally that person's just someone you've known for years. They're super important, and they've finally made their way and asked about it because their friends are on it, or they've seen what you're doing, and they're offering to help you because you've helped them so much, right? And this could be, and again, guys, these are people like Jesse Itzler, who's founded companies. These are people like Charlie Engel, who's done some amazing endurance races. Gold medalist winners. We had Rudy on, who literally founded the movie Rudy, famous Notre Dame football player, and just entrepreneur, and the list goes on. I mean, powerful CEOs, musicians. Mace Curran, who's flew lead solo for the Thunderbirds. So all sorts of eclectic people, and I can't suggest it enough. So you'll have the notes of the Outlier project for anybody in there, and you can kind of see who he's connected to and meet some of these people who, again, I think the greatest power isn't just the people that speak to us, it's the relationships and the connections that are made as a result of this community of being next to each other. So
we had Matt Higgins on yesterday, and Matt, was the vice chairman of the Miami Dolphins. He runs RSE Ventures with Stephen Ross, who is worth, I think, 7 point something billion. Just an amazing guy. And Matt was asked a question by one of our members, and he said, "Would it be helpful if I was on your podcast?" And she started crying because, he'll be the biggest guest she's ever had or probably ever will have on her podcast. And he said not only that, but because she serves the military, he said, "I'm also going to get you a high-ranking military officer to come on the podcast too." So those are the types of things that happen when it's, more than just a transactional guest.
Yeah. And she didn't have to ask. I don't know. Maybe she just made a statement or something. She didn't ask. He offered. Yeah. So that's the thing. When you surround yourself with people like this, and Scott, I think you view your network as the people in your network. You want to connect them. I don't say you're just a super connector to be trendy. You're kind of always looking at ways to who can I connect in my network to make that strategic connection where both could benefit. And sometimes it could just be getting them together on a Zoom call. So you truly view, I think, if you sign up for this thing and you have access to a Zoom call, you have access to these people no more than I do. I might have their cell phone numbers and I've built a relationship with them, but so can you. I've built relationships with, Susan McPherson, who's wrote, had best-selling books about human connection, and she's been on the podcast, and I sometimes write back and forth. I've had, I've met Claude Silver and talked about you. I've met Jesse the other last weekend, and while I don't know him as well as you, I still kind of can talk about knowing you, and so it all comes around. It's all cyclical in that way. So I don't think people look at their networks. It's more so. Who do I know that can make an introduction, and then they ask for that introduction, as opposed to who do I know well enough that I can pour into and maybe introduce them to other people. So I'm not. It's not for me. It's literally for them. I'm trying to help them, and it could be for something long term for me, but it's really no agenda, no motive behind it other than I want to help strengthen my network to get to know. To help
because
them,
I don't look at it as my network. I look at it as my friends. It's like, who are my friends? And some of them you're casual friends, and some of them you're like bosom buddies. But it's who are my friends. And when you start to think about it that way, it's like there's nothing I like to do more than help my friends. And so I don't even view it as my network. Because that's kind of like a business thing, and it makes it seem more transactional, and it makes it seem like something you want to monetize.
Yeah.
I just view it as I got a short time here on Earth. I want to hang out with cool, fun people. I want to have fun, cool, and friends that do really amazing things, because that inspires me. It keeps me humble. It keeps me motivated. So I view it as my friends versus my network.
It's a great way to look at it. I think a lot of people don't view it that way. They go, well, I know my friends. I want to have a small group of friends. But you just look at it if I know you and we, have even the slightest relationship, we're friends. You have close friends and you have casual friends.
Sure.
But friends, what would you do for a friend is more powerful than maybe a business connection, if you're trying to get something out of it. So I like that frame of perspective of looking at it. Scott, I could certainly talk to you for so long. I think we learned a ton about being extraordinary around our friends circle. I'm going to say, not just our network. But ending off the podcast, I always say selling by being human is about helping others get to know you, and you're so open and honest about kind of your backstory growing up and sharing yourself with everybody. So I won't get too much into that here, but this is just a fun story about you. So if I asked Meg or some of your closest friends, what is just something that is so totally Scott? Maybe it's something that could only or would only happen to you, or that just is something that only you do. What is something that you what is something that they would tell me, you think?
It's strange because I'm kind of an introvert. I'm a little bit more of an introvert than I am an extrovert. I'm technically, like, I've had somebody tell me that's a lot smarter than me, I'm an ambivert, which is kind of like somebody who's in between. But I'm also, like, I'm not afraid to do different things. So we literally just, the thing that popped into my head is a discussion we had today in a meeting we had with the Outlier Project. And, Kathy was talking about, we all went to the Yale-Harvard game, and I dressed up, so our mascot is a platypus. So I dressed up in a platypus costume, and we had special beer made for the Outlier Project called People Over Everything Beer. So I was walking around the tailgate at Yale-Harvard in a platypus costume, handing out free beer to people. And, I'm sure my wife was mortified. And I thought it was pretty fun and funny, and enjoyed myself. So, those are the things that I think people that know me, because I am a little bit more reserved than maybe people might think on a podcast. You wouldn't necessarily think I'm walking around in a platypus costume, handing out beer, but that's definitely me.
I love it. Tell people why the platypus. What is the meaning behind it?
So the biggest outlier in the animal kingdom, I would say, is a platypus. It's the most hard to describe animal. It's a mammal that lays eggs. It has a duck's bill. It has venomous claws. It's kind of the most unique animal. So the Outlier Project is all about people who show up differently, that are unique. So it's kind of a no-brainer when we said, you know what, we need a mascot. Let's think about that. And it took about 2 seconds. We said, we're like, platypus. That's it.
I love it. That is really Inception, being an outlier in life in an outlier costume of an outlier, so, but that is a great story. Scott, you are truly one of my favorite outliers, the chief outlier, but we all are taking after you and ourselves, and probably you learn so much from us and the people that you bring on to make us stronger. Where can people learn more about the Outlier Project, maybe show up differently and meet you? Where would you send them?
Yeah. If you want to find out more about the Outlier Project, you can either connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy if you say, hey, I want to jump on a quick call and learn more about the Outlier Project. I'm happy to jump on a quick call and talk about it. If you want to go to a website, it's theoutlierproject.co, so not .com, .co, and you can get a better flavor for what it's all about. But I'm easy to get to, especially through LinkedIn. That's the main platform that I use. I still have not mastered Instagram. I have no idea how to build a huge audience on Instagram, but you can find me there too. But LinkedIn's the place to go. Nice.
Well, all the stuff will be there for folks. Scott MacGregor, thank you, my friend, and thank you for just really putting out what you do into the world and encouraging what you do with your mantra, people over everything, and being being extraordinary. You've taught me a great deal. So thank you so much for being on today.
I cannot thank you enough, Alex. I mean that. I appreciate you as a friend, and I appreciate you as a member of the community. But this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Same here. Thanks, Scott.